Okay, so Book of Joshua, chapter 8, and we have 35 verses in here. We're going to go and check out 5 different sections. Now, Joshua 8 was kind of interesting to break up. So the sections they sound interesting, and we'll get into them anyway. Okay, so our section 1 today is going to be the Lord's restored favor, right? We're going to talk a little bit about Achan. Remember his little mistake, the little thing that kind of, yeah. Section 2, the first ambush. Section 3, we're going to talk about the battle stations. Again, right? We're in battle. God himself is leading them. Section 4, Ai is destroyed, or I. And yes, it is pronounced I or I ha, depending on the context of the city, but I we're going to go for. Section 5, the covenant is red. All right, covenant is red. We're pretty simple on the slides today. I'm going to do my best to draw up a little bit of here to give a visual, but let's take a look at this. Joshua chapter 8. That's a lot of all sorts of interesting stuff. Go ahead, hit me, bud.
Wait, what? Did you pick on me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so why did God say that they could take the spoils of this city and not the other one?
Jericho had been set by the Lord for destruction. All of it was. So that was the entering, it's kind of the sacrifice, the beginning sacrifice and the entrance into the land of Canaan. And so all of Jericho was condemned for destruction. So after that, now the Israelites are going to start to be able to take booty, if you will. Alright, so hang on, let me see here. Okay, check it out, guys. So Jericho, right? We talked about Jericho. It's approximately where we're standing at. Come to Gilgal, right? From Gilgal, they come down. The first attack, they go after Ai. That did not go well, right? They didn't listen to God. They didn't get their plan from God. They decided to just go ahead and handle business themselves and do it. And what happened? 36 men died, right? Achan, which we're going to get to him in just a minute. We'll go over his as well. So we have Jericho, Gilgal, Ai. So north, south, west, and east. This is supposed to be a mountain range, not a cat. That's okay. Okay, so into the notes. So we got that up there. Section 1, the Lord's restored favor. In verse 1, God says, "Fear not." Jesus begins to comfort Joshua. A very important lesson was learned here. Sin defiles everything and must be totally eradicated when it shows itself. We know this from the Apostle Paul in Romans 6:23. The wages of sin are death. If you sin, what's the wage? Death. Right? We can see how one man's sin, in action, sin cost him every earthly possession, but worst of all, it cost him his soul. Disobeyed God. Right? So obviously Joshua, he's pretty torn up about this, right? He didn't want any of his people to die. He's not happy about it, right? He's pretty torn up about the whole thing. But Jesus says, "Fear not, I have a plan." This plan will secure the conquest of Ai, which is pronounced 2 ways, I or Ayah. I had to look it up. So yes, I or Ayah, depending on the context. The Lord begins to restore his favor on Israel, and their faith has been re-empowered, okay? So everyone's kind of bummed out. They went out, they tried to attack Ai, and they got stomped, right? They got turned around, had to run away, they lost people. Their faith is probably down in the dirt a little bit. But after this is all happening, God says, "Hey, don't worry about it. This has been fixed, it's been corrected," right? So their faith has now been re-empowered. The first loss to Ai was a devastating blow, faith-shattering for some. When Achan stole devoted objects, he placed himself into the devoted status under the doom of destruction, right? Verse 2 says, "This time they are allowed to take loot," right? So if only Achan would have waited, he probably would have got what he was, really, really wanting. But he got greedy, right? He took it for himself, and he paid the ultimate price. He paid with his life and his kids. And okay, I'll get off of Achan. There's a big story with that guy there. All right, so they are to raze the city to the ground, killing all the people, but the animals and all the loot they're allowed to keep. All right, so God themselves adjusted. They've gotten back, they've fixed everything. Achan is dead. Jesus Christ, the Lord's favor has been restored. They're ready to go here. All right, section 2, the first ambush. All right, in verse 3, this is interesting. You guys are going to enjoy this. So 30,000 mighty men of valor. All right, Joshua picks out here. Now, this seems like quite overkill. All right, for what's going on. So you might kind of think like, maybe they're just really angry and they don't want to lose anybody again, right? But 30,000 seems quite a mass of people, right? nearly impossible at least to hide that many men that he's sending out, right? So let's take a closer look at the words being used here and see if we can get any more details about it. Now, the word in question here is 1,000. So what we're talking about here is over here, he has asked 30,000 mighty men of valor to come. And what he wants them to do, what he wants them to do is he wants to come down, run around here, and he wants them to hide just to the west side of Ai. Okay. But 30,000 people is a lot. That's a lot of people, right? Let's talk about this. The word 1,000 is elif or elifah, all right, depending on the context. But what's really interesting is when this word is used in other passages, right? For example, 1 Chronicles 12, 23 through 27, 2 Chronicles 13, 3 and 17, and 2 Chronicles 17, 14 through 19. In these passages, this word is actually defined as chief, officer, or captain. So now this word turns from 30,000 men, it turns into a synonym for the mighty men of valor. What he's actually saying is he's picked 30 mighty men of valor, war heroes, right? Now remember, the Israelites have been fighting all over the place on this side, right? We have fighting men of valor. Joshua has chosen 30 specific individuals, like the guerrilla war team, because I need you guys, come over here unseen, all right? So he sends them out. They pitched out. They're hiding in the dark out here just behind Ai. Okay, so with this knowledge, we can now read the passage as such that Joshua chose out 30 chiefs or captains or officers. Now we see this first group sent to hide and wait for Joshua's signal and ambush was a total of 30 hero-type guerrillas. Love getting ahead of myself. So these men are sent in advance of the main army to take position behind a knoll behind the west side of the city. Hit me.
Wait, so he didn't pick 30,000, it was just 30 men?
That's correct. It's not actually 30,000 men. And I'll show you here in just a minute. His entire army that he's bringing up against Ai, the main part of the army that's sitting up there is about 25,000. The entire army that he's running with right now is like 30,000 people. So to pick 30,000 people out of the 30,000 people to go hide, it doesn't leave anybody. So you have to get into the specific words, that elit, right? That word can be used, like I said, in those three different ways, chief, officer, and captain. So it's not that they misinterpreted it, because the word is still used as 1,000, but without the information of the context of what's happening, it's easy to misinterpret or use the wrong definition of the word. So again, it's the mighty men of valor. That word elit is a synonym for that. It's taken the place. The mighty men of valor is specifically talking about individuals. And you'll see here in just a little bit, Joshua sends another, we'll get there, 5,000 men, right? Don't let me get ahead of myself. All right, so where are we at? Verse 4 and 5. All right, so verse 5 we come in and the plan is being handed down about how we will flee and draw them out. Right, I'll come in and read this out to us. And I and all the people that are with me will approach into the city, and it shall come to pass when they come out against us as the first, we will flee before them. Right, they're going to take advantage of the overconfidence that the men of the city of Ai have. Right, they just got whooped. So they're gonna say, okay, we're gonna make them think that they're gonna do it again, and we're gonna draw them out. Okay, verse 6 is when they all come out, they will think that they won, being of overconfidence. Verse 7, we're gonna move a little bit until we get to the next little bit. Verse 7 is the ambush that he's speaking about. It says, then you shall rise up from the ambush and seize the city, for the Lord your God will deliver it in your hand. That's these guys. So he's saying, we're gonna come, we're gonna run in, they're gonna have them chase us out. I'm going to give you a signal. When that signal comes in, take the city, right? So he's laying out the plan, right? That's the first ambush. In verse 8, God lays his commandment, right? It says, and it shall be when you have taken the city that you shall set it on fire. According to the commandment of the Lord you shall do. See, I have commanded you. God says, this is what's going to happen, right? Israelites already know what happens when you don't follow God's plan. Right? So when God says, I've commanded it, he's laying it down. It's like, hey, listen to me. This is what we're doing. All right? Verse 9, Joshua sends everyone to their places. We don't find out about the second attachment of the 5,000. Again, same word, about 2 miles east to intercept the from Bethel. So we're coming into section 3, battle stations. Okay, so Jericho. What we have here, oh, so yes, hit me.
Sorry, this is a stupid question, but
No,
if
so
they
it's
burned everything to the ground,
Yes.
what are they supposed to loot?
The buildings and the people and the not the animals this time, just the people, men, women, and the buildings themselves. All the loot, clothes, gold, tools, all that they can take this time.
So take first and then burn?
No. They actually start burning it first. Remember? Oh, yeah, they actually start burning it first, and I'll show you. We'll walk through each of the steps in here. So you get a little spot in here. Okay, so here we have our 30 men of valor. Jericho, right? They beat it. They've come up to Gilgal. This is where they're stationed at now. So what he's going to do is he's going to bring his army, his main set, and they're going to camp right here at the north side of Ai. Okay? So this is his main camp. There's approximately 25,000 people in this main camp right here. Okay. Verse 10. This is the final evening in Gilgal. Joshua rose early and numbered or mustered his army and gathered his forces to begin to head out. So he grabs everybody. He's got everyone here in Gilgal. He's already sent the 30 guys out. Gets everyone set. He goes, okay, here's our guys. This is what I have. Let's go get into place. And he starts taking out this way. Now, Joshua and all the fighting men that went to make camp within eyesight of Ai on the north side. Now, if you look at the geographical area, there's actually a little ridge line right here above the area where the city of Ai is believed to be. They're not 100% sure about this. Some archaeologists believe they found it, but everything that they found doesn't line up with, yeah. So there's a couple spots in contention that are all right here that they believe Ai is, but they have a general idea of where it should be according to the Bible. So we have everyone sitting on top of this ridge within eyesight. So the people of Ai can look up and they can see him camping out on top of the hill, right? Eyesight. Right? So they see him up here, right? Now, coming over here, verse 12. 5,000 men moved in place to cut off Bethel to the west side of the city. So I'll read verse 12 here. It says, and he took about 5,000 men. Now again, that word, right? Elif, 1,000. But notice that they aren't called men of valor. Just 5,000 men. This is where the context comes in when he's talking about the 30,000, the 30 Elif. Right? He's talking about 30 men of valor, individual specific people. This is just a group of 5,000. Now, what he has them do is as these guys are coming in here, he had the 30 come and hide. They're probably even a little closer. I mean, they're right there, just out of sight, behind some knolls here. He has the second group of 5,000 people come in under the cover of darkness. And he camps them out right in between Ai and Bethel, right? Because they know Bethel, that's their backup plan. As soon as these guys start running out and they start chasing, these guys are going to come. They got to do something about that. So the Lord has a plan. 30 men of valor right here waiting for Ai. 5,000 men over here to handle Bethel. The men are coming from Bethel. Verse 13, once everything was in place, Joshua moved himself and the frontal assault group down in the valley closer to Ai. So what they've done is now they leave the main hub of the army up here. They bring themselves down here. Now the ground kind of lays into this movement. So there's only one space for you to go. So when they were chased away last time, they had to go a specific route. Back up and out. And this is what they're planning on lining themselves up exactly where they were before. So everything lines up. So when the people of AI come out, they're like, oh, we've seen this before, right? And they're going to come running, right? So that's the whole plan, to make it look exactly like the failure that was beforehand, okay? So this is the evening. So now everyone's in place. Main army is here, right? Coming up nice and early. The sun's about to come up. AI is watching them come into place. 5,000 is secretly in place, and the 30 guys for the ambush is in place. We are ready to go. Verse 15, now the Israelites with Joshua at the lead pretend to run away just before, even taking the same route of escape. This will entice the enemy's army. And that was our verse 15. Verse 16, the plan worked. All of the men of Ai and probably and with probably some kind of signal to Bethel for them to come and help. Now, we're not exactly sure, because the Bethel is approximately 2 miles from the area where Ai is believed to be. So there's some sort of signal that would have need to have happened between, as soon as the king sees them, send the signal, send the guys out, so that everybody would be coming in at the same time. Verse 17. Let's see here. Yes, the plan worked perfectly. So perfectly that all the men from both cities came on the charge, leaving no men in either town. That's how excited they were to come out and beat the Israelites. Like, woohoo, we got this, come and join the fun. Everybody, all the men of war of those 2 towns came running to get them a piece of some Israel. Right? Does not work well for them this time though. Section 4. Ai is destroyed. All right, verse 18. Check this out. And the Lord said unto Joshua, stretch out the spear that is in my hand towards Ai, and I will give it into thine hand. And Joshua stretched out the spear that he had in his hand toward the city. This spear, this is the signal for these guys. Now I want you to tell me something. You think these guys could see a spear this far away? I know it's this far away they probably could, but in real life, real spear, right? A spear. Do you think of all the mess, all the people running, and Joshua and everyone running, that they would be able to see one guy turn around with a spear? It's an interesting thought, right? The Bible says so, but let's take a look at it again, right? We're getting into the specifics of these words. Spear. What word did they use for that? The word that they use for this is kedon. Kedon, it's not a spear. The specific phrasing of this word, because there's different types, because the word can mean several things, is not actually a spear, it's actually a scimitar. Now, a scimitar, I don't know if you know, is a very flat blade, kind of curved up like this, very flat edges. So if you can imagine, if the sun is coming up and Joshua pulls out this nice big flat blade and starts tilting it in the sunshine, what's that going to do? It's going to send outside. You can see a flash of light from a long way away. So it's not a spear, it's a scimitar. Small difference. But this is where you can get some of the confusion, because there's this word. Let's see here. This was used when stretched out, tilt the blade, right, with the wrist reflecting the sun towards their direction. The flash of light, if unblocked, could be seen for miles. Now, this is the part I was getting to. The word has been used also for javelin, short sword, dart, and even gorget. Now, a gorget is a leather piece of armor that goes around your neck right here. So it's a very versatile word, but there's also different functions of the word. Kedon, specifically, is scimitar. There's a very small change of the word each time you want to change it to something else. So, again, is it wrong? No. But the specifics are there. You just have to dig in there and look a little bit, right? So it's a scimitar. Joshua turns around with a big sword and points it out, and the ambushers see it. And as soon as they see it, what do? They rise, and they run in and they take Ai. Verse 19, the ambushers see the signal and burst into action. With no defenders, this was easy. They immediately began to set fire, everything on fire. The plumes of black smoke began to rise high into the sky. Things are going exactly as planned. And verse 19 reads, and the ambush rose quickly out of their place and ran as soon as he had stretched out his hand. And they entered in the city, took it, and hasted and set the city on fire. Now, this first fire that they're setting, so these guys, everyone's running away. Joshua says, nope, turn around, flip them around. These guys come busting in here, right? Now, there's nobody to stop them. There's nothing to stop them. So what happens? Fire, right? They light it up. They light it up. But this time, to get to your question, is they're not burning to the ground yet. This smoke and this fire is supposed to be a signal to distract the enemy. And we're about to see how well that worked. The men of Ai beheld the smoke rising up to heaven, and they knew they were pinned. They knew that the city and their home and their families had been taken. The Israelites stopped, turned back, and attacked. So they're running, they're all happy. Yeah, we're going to stop them. Look at, hey, Billy. Up to heaven. They lit all sorts of stuff on fire. Probably all the hay, anything that they could get, because they said they hastily did it. They ran in, they weren't going in there slaughtering people. Their mission was to set things on fire so that the people of Ai would see it, stop, and realize. Because as soon as they stop, they're in real big trouble. They know the backup is gone, right? Verse 20, I'll read. They see it, Israel turns back on the pursuers. Verse 21, when Joshua and all Israel saw that the ambush had taken the city, and the smoke and the city ascended, and they turned again and slew everyone. Verse 22, we'll get there in just a second. A lot of stuff happens in very short little periods. So they kill all the men of Ai. They turn on them, boom, they come in and start taking them out. Right? We find out later about this guy. We were told that all of the men of Ai and Bethel came out. These guys ain't never made it there. The plan of the 5,000 worked, and we read about that here in just a minute, about how all of the men died. They took it. All right, coming into verse 22. Now it says, and the others issued out of the city against them, so they were in the midst of Israel, some on this side and some on that side, and they smote them so that there was none left that remained or escaped. So this is kind of interesting. Israel approaches the city, and the remaining people inside charge out and attack. So, a little bit here, let's just say got the little gate right here. In Israel, they're coming in, and they've actually surrounded the front gate here. And as soon as they get there, the women, the children, any of the able-bodied men that are able, they all come running out. One final hurrah. Ah! Run right in, they get surrounded, Israel encompasses them and kills them all, right? You gotta give it to them though, it's one last stand, right? They're like, freedom, and took off running, it just didn't work, right? They ran right into the body of Israel, and Israel completely finished them off. As verse 22, verse 23. Okay, the king is taken alive. They have for him, he would be considered a greater criminal and was reserved for a public execution and burial under the watchful eye of Joshua. We'll come back to this and talk more about why and what's happening in verse 29. Come with me over here. Again, we're going to jump up to 24. So 23, we're told that the king of Ai, yes?
Why do they need to publicly execute the king?
I'm going to show you. It's actually a command from God himself. We're going to read it, right? It's a good question. Why did they have to do this? And they do them pretty dirty too. We talked about the method of this. All right, so 23, the king is taken alive. We'll get back to it. I'm getting ahead of myself. 24. So just as God had said in verse 1, all were slain and the city was given into their hand. So now you can always count on God and his promises. What he says will always happen. Right? Isaiah 55:11 tells us that, so shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the things whereto I send it. If God said something is going to happen, it will happen. Right? The problem with us humans is we're not very patient. We think things should happen in our time. Right? We get anxious and overexcited, but God says if he tells you, we'll put these out before I make too much noise. He tells you that what he says will happen. So we can trust in that, right? So when God told Joshua, I have a plan that will bring this city under your rule. All they had to do was follow it. And they did. And what happened? They got the city. They got the city. Verse 25. Now, verse 25 tells us, let me get in here, I'll read it out to you. And so it was that all that fell that day, both men and women, were 12,000, even all the men of Ai. And again, the word used, elif, right? 1,000. But this time we're talking about the whole city. So, and he didn't say again, the word we were looking for, mighty men of valor, right? He's not talking about specific individuals. He's talking about there were 12,000 total people. So the word elif here means 1,000, right? Context this time helps us define many of the meanings. Verse 26, Joshua, we are told, kept his arm stretched forward for the entire battle. It says, as they were running away, when Joshua turned around and he pointed that sword out there, it says he didn't bring it down until the whole thing was done. So he stood there and he was pointing it. Wherever he was moving, whatever he was doing, because it doesn't say he was standing there, the whole time he had that sword pointed out, right? That's not that glinting going on. Now, we can read a similar story about this. We know this was with Moses, right? Exodus 17, 11, and 12. Let's go read it real quick. 12. And it says, and it came to pass when Moses held up his hand that Israel prevailed. And when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands were heavy, and they took a stone and put it under him. And he sat thereon, and Aaron and Hur stayed up his hands. the one on one side and the one on the other side. And his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. Right? Joshua knows this story. So he puts out his hand. I imagine there's a lot of faith in God, saying, Moses, when his hand dropped, I'm not going to drop my hand either. And once I put it up, we're the leader and the lead in the charge, right? Kind of an interesting similarity there between Moses and Joshua. Verse 20, let me get back to the actual chapter. Verse 27, unlike Jericho, the warriors were able to loot the city for themselves. Again, Achan could have had his. Verse 27, it says, only the cattle and the spoil of that city Israel took for a prey unto themselves, according to the word of the Lord, which he commanded Joshua, right? The Lord said, this time you can have everything, right? This time you can have everything. Verse 28, Joshua burnt Ai, emptying the city, then burning it down. To get to Uphaz's question, when they first lit the city on fire, nope, they weren't raising it to the ground at that moment. They were just setting the signal. Burning anything they can to get some black smoke in the air as fast as possible, because the longer this takes, the better chances that your own people are going to die, right? This needs to happen fast. So it says they hastily ran in and started lighting things on fire. Now that they have the city, there's a couple fires going on, but they loot the city, right? All the people are dead, so they go in and they get the animals. They go get the clothes, they get the money, they get all the tools, they get all the weapons, they get everything, and they split it up between them, and then they finish the completion of destruction of Ai. Bring it down and raise it down to the ground. Right, verse 29. All right, we said we'd get back to this one. Verse 29 says, and the king of Ai, he hanged on a tree until eventide. And as soon as the sun went down, Joshua commanded that they should take his carcass down from the tree and cast it at entering of the gate of the city, and raise thereon a great heap of stones that remaineth unto this day.
Was that tree the same thing they did in Esther?
Yep. Yeah, that's right, that boy. That's right. They don't hang them from a rope. Stick them on a big pole and lift them. Yep, big shish kebab. Hang them up there, right? But this, it sounds like a pretty hardcore thing to do. But verse 29, we need to look at this some more. Back was on a tree. So this is a widely used method for executing greater criminals. And we're going to go read this here. This is Joshua following Moses' instructions into Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 22 and 23. It says this, and if a man have committed a sin worthy of death, and he be put to death, and thou hang him on a tree, his body shall not remain all night upon the tree, but thou shalt in any wise bury him that day. For he that is hanged is accursed of God. That thy land be not defiled, which the Lord thy God giveth thee for an inheritance. God told Moses, and Moses told the people, when you take these people out, now they didn't, it's kind of interesting, because in the verse 1, Jesus says you're going to do the same you did to Jericho, to Ai. We didn't read about them hanging the king of Jericho up on a tree. But according to this, they did. Right? They did. And again, in verse 29, it says that he took him down that day. Just as the word had said. That that evening, they took him down. Why? Because all the land was cursed. The whole time he was up there. Right? It's a curse. Curse to everything. But it was to show God is in control here. Right? They've taken the city. Verse 29. Hung him on a tree. Joshua follows the instructions. All right. Final verse. Section 5. The covenant is read. So, after they do this, everybody got a good idea of this? We're going to erase a little bit of this. After they do this, they kind of do something funny. Generally speaking, out of military conquest, you don't take a break, right? But this time they did. They took a divine break. It was told that they must do so. Okay, so let's read a little bit about this, and we'll put some more drawings up there on the deal. So verse 30, Joshua makes a divinely ordered pilgrimage by God through Moses. Now this can be read in Deuteronomy 11, 26 through 32, and Deuteronomy 27, 2 through 13. Now this is God giving Moses, telling him how they're to dress the stones that they're about to write on. Like all of this God had previously told them what was going to happen, what was going to be done, where it was going to be done. Where we're going here, I'm going to show you, wasn't just a happenstance. They weren't like, well, there's a place up here we might be able to. No. They were told specifically to go and to be at these specific places. So let's take a look at this. Verse 30. Then Joshua built an altar unto the Lord God of Israel in Mount Ebal. So there's two, they call it mountains, but they're just really big hills. Ebal. Here's next one. Altar. This one is just slightly, just 1,000, 1,200 feet or so higher than the secondary hill. Now, Mount Ebal. So here's them at Mount Ebal. Right? Let's see. Are they not on the other side of the Jordan, by the way where the sun goeth down, in the land of the Canaanites, which dwell in the campaign over against Gilgal, besides the plains of Morah? We were just talking about Gilgal. Yep.
Why are they blessing mountains and cursing mountains, hills?
Sacrifices.
Oh.
Nope. Blessing sacrifice, sin sacrifice, scapegoat sacrifice. There's if you go back and read it, those ones I was, the secondary, 27, 2 through 13 talks about each individual sacrifice that's to be made and how the sacrifices are to be done. There's a whole lot of stuff going on at this one point that's just for them to read off the law of Moses here. All right, so in verse 30, let's see here, verse 32, come in here. Let's see here, no, 31, sorry. And Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded the children of Israel, as it is written in the book of the law of Moses, which we just read, an altar of whole stones, over which no man had lifted up any iron, and they offered thereon burnt offerings unto the Lord, and sacrificed peace offerings. And he wrote in verse 32, and he wrote there upon the stones a copy of the law of Moses, which he wrote in the presence of the children of Israel. You go back and read the scriptures from Deuteronomy. It talks about how they're to plaster the stones, white plaster the stones, how to prepare the stones. We won't go in and read it all, but it's all there. Every single step that Joshua was taking was given to him by God beforehand. It says, when you get here, when you get to Gilgal, when you beat them, and then you come up to this place, this is what you're going to do. And every single thing has happened that he has said is going to happen. And so they're following him once again. Right? All the laws was read. Verse 34, he read the law to the nations, declaring the law of the land. Right? Verse 34, and after he read all the words of the law, the blessings and the cursings, according to all that is written in the book of the law. Now this is, you can go check out Nehemiah 8:3. There's an interesting one on this. Chances are it wasn't actually Joshua who's reading it out. It was most likely the priests of the Levites. Again, it's I didn't have a chance to really dive into this with you guys, but a lot of times in the Old Testament, when one of the leaders has said that they're doing something, it's actually something that they had to declare somebody else to do. So Joshua more than likely told the Levites, read this out. So he wrote it, and then had the Levites come out and preach it out. Now, verse 35. There was not a word of all that Moses commanded, which Joshua read not before all the congregation of Israel, with the women and the little ones and the strangers that were conversant among them. It was interesting, there were non-Jews living among them the whole time. So what he's done is he's kind of broken up everybody in half. He's got one group in front of one mountain, he's got one group in front of the other mountain. They have the Ark of the Covenant right here between them, and they have either Joshua or one of the Levites reading off of these stone tabs. Now, this area actually makes a natural amphitheater. So when you're speaking in this direction into the mountains, it's actually reverberating and echoing it. So you can actually just talk with a semi-loud voice and everybody can hear you. I don't know if you've ever been to the Gorge where they do concerts down in there. Very similar. The back stone wall creates this great echoing and just sends the sound all over the place. So it's a great spot. Again, nothing by happenstance. God picked this for a reason. He's doing this for a reason. All the people here are hearing this law. Now the reason is because this is the law, this is the covenant between God and Israel. This is the law of the land. That's what they're doing here. They're making their peace offerings, they're making the sin offerings, they're going through all the steps. They're setting the law of the land, saying this is our land, God's law is the law that we follow, and anyone here will follow that law. They're setting it up, right? Beginning of the conquest. So they've done. We've talked about the conquest. Both sides, we have the north side, the center side, and the south side. With Ai and Jericho destroyed, the center of the Canaan Empire has just been cut through. right? The south can't come up and help the north can't come down and help the south. They've taken the guts right out of Canaan, right? So now they're up here, they do this here. So chapter 9, Jamie's going to get in there and continue the craziness that is Joshua. Now, I have a fun little rabbit hole. I have enough time just to get through it and to finish this out. Now, this is kind of interesting. I'm going to leave a lot of gaps open for you because I want you guys to go check it out. But to reach this natural amphitheater right here, the Israelites would have to pass by the fortress of Shechem, right, which is guarded the entrance to the valley, which is less than a mile to the east. Now, knowing this, we must ask the question: why didn't they attack them? They had to go through this encampment, this fortified base that's in the Middle East. So if this is the path coming in, you have the mountains. They're right here. There's a fortress there. The Bible talks about it, right? Why didn't they attack Shechem? Why didn't they do anything with it, right? Supposed to be killing everybody, taking everybody out. Well, if you read, this is interesting, if you read 1 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 24 through 28, possibly living in Shechem were the direct descendants of Jacob, who had left Egypt on their own around before the occupied oppression of the Israelites in Egypt. Now, if you read in here in the Chronicles, a woman named Ephraim or Sherah had returned to Canaan and built Beth-horon. It tells us in Chronicles that there were descendants of Jacob living in these little areas, including Shechem. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the Amarna stones, or the Amarna letters, excuse me. Anyone ever heard of the Amarna letters? Ancient tablets of cuneiform script that were found in this area of Shechem. Now, they actually describe the prince of Shechem having an alliance with an invading army, the Iburu, which the Israelites, right? But I'm going to leave a lot of those holes in there. I want you to go check that out. Why they didn't kill Shechem? Were there descendants of Jacob living in Shechem? Where were the other places where there are descendants of Jacob living? Right? Kind of interesting to take a look at that. Let's see, all right, so finishing out on verse 35, after a little rabbit hole was fun. And so in keeping with the divine purpose for the conquest of Canaan, that the law should be set up in the heart of the country, to be from that moment forward the law of the land, and Israel should renew her covenant vows to Jehovah, her God. Other examples of their covenant being reestablished with God is in Exodus 24, 4 and 7, 2 Kings 23, 2, and Nehemiah 8 and 9 are all times when Israel renewed their covenant with God. People sometimes do this at their 10-year wedding anniversary, renew their vows, right? Like, we're continuing on with this, right? And so there's a couple examples of that happening. So again, Old Testament, we're reading all about Jesus. Jesus leading in the army, leading the charge, having the plan, having everything lined out for everybody to do, right? And then if you don't follow Jesus, what happens? There's no success. There's no victory. Jesus tells us that you can do nothing without him, right? And here in the Old Testament, we get a good example of that. Now, my favorite thing in the whole world is Romans Road. I give it to you guys every single time, because regardless of all the things that we go through, we talk about the words, the Hebrew words, the Greek words, this, that, the next thing, rabbit holes here and there. It means nothing, and you can do nothing with it until you've accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. You need to take a step in with Joshua and with the Israelites and follow the Lord God. Now, how do we do that? How do we get into that, right? We need to know that we're all sinners. Romans 3:23 tells us that for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Every single one of them. Way back then, look at Achan. He fell short of the glory of God, right? I can't look at Achan and be like, oh, what a terrible person. He's the same as we are. He's just another person. He fell under the grip of sin, right? The greed. He fell. We've all fallen, right? We can't look at other people and say, well, you've fallen worse than I have, or da-da-da-da. We're all on the same playing field. We've all sinned, we've all fallen short of the glory of God, and we're all damned to hell. It is what it is. But we also know that in Romans 6:23, that the wages of sin are death. Again, all sin falls short of the glory of God, and the wages of sin are death. You disobey God, you disobey the holy, the righteous, holy, 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 the God, our God is holy. We can't have little punishments. It's impossible, right? We had 2 people in the Bible see heaven, John being one of them. And what's in the throne room standing around God saying all the time what? Holy, holy, holy. That's the description that we get of God from John, who saw heaven. That there are beings in the throne rooms telling you that he is holy, holy, holy. So what must the punishment be from the absolute utmost holy being? Death. It's death. Romans 5:8 tells us Christ died for us. There was nothing that we could do. You were lost. I was lost. Everybody was lost. There wasn't a sacrifice. There wasn't a cow. There wasn't a goat. There wasn't a sheep. There were no peace offerings. There were no sin offerings. There were no scapegoats. There was nothing that you could do that could actually cleanse you from sin until Jesus Christ, the Son of God, God himself, came down and gave his life as the ultimate sacrifice for us, right? Not because we did anything, not because we deserved it, not because we put the right cheat code in the game controller, right? He did it for us because that was the only way to save us. He loved us that much that he died to get you back. And I don't know what it is about me that he loves so much, but thank God he does, because I don't think I'm that loving of a person. Not easy to love, but Jesus did. He looked at me and said, wow, what a pile. I love you. It's okay, right? Then verse 10:9, Romans 10:9. Believe in your heart and speak with your mouth in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, and you shall be saved. Confess with the mouth the Lord Jesus Christ and believe in the heart that he is raised him from the grave, and thou shalt be saved. Does it say anything about in there about doing anything else? Is there another list of things in here? It says, oh, make sure you got this right. Make sure you got that right. Don't. You can't follow Jesus if you got this going wrong. Does it say that anywhere in there? No. So don't let people put that in there, right? You believe in your heart that he died and God raised him from the dead. Not just brought him back like Lazarus. Not brought him back like he did for me off that metal table, but to never taste death again. I'm going to die again. I'm going to die again. Jesus will never die. And if you don't want your soul to die, you need to believe in him and call upon his name and do so. 1, have you set yourself right with God? Do you have things buried in the center of your tent trying to hide? There's no hiding from God. There's no hiding from God. You guys read in chapter 7 when they found Achan, God told them who it was. I'll let you go back and read it and see how they went about doing that. But God told them who it was and said he did it. And so they sent down and brought him in and said, hey, confess. Bring glory to God by confessing. And he did. Right? So, have you set yourself right with God? Second thought, do you have God's plan for victory in your life? And are you following it? Right? God's got this amazing plan for you. Does it mean your life's going to be super easy? No. Does it mean you're not going to run into big issues? No. But he's got it for you. And we know that by following it, we'll end in victory. Regardless of the steps and the battles that we have to go through to get to that victory, the victory's already there. Right? Faint not, Paul says. Run your race. Follow the plan that God has for your life. And then finally, are you seeking God? I want you to check these verses out. Matthew 7-8. Psalm 63:1. And Amos 5:4, which says, for thus saith the Lord unto the house of Israel, seek ye me, and you shall find life. The wages of sin is death, but if you seek God, you shall find life. All right, you guys, that is Joshua chapter 8.